axe to the Obama legacy, from Obamacare to immigration, but he's far from finished.
The next president is going to undo what he's doing. You have to remove these things so you can completely devolve power out of D.C.
What he has said is it would be good if the Democrats came to the White House and cut a deal on Obamacare.
The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences expelling embattled producer Harvey Weinstein.
It's not just hypocrisy. They knew this for years and said nothing.
The Academy released a brief statement saying that sexually predator behavior in the film industry is over.
Steve Bannon, he's been out there saying, you better be on notice, these establishment Republicans.
There's a time and season for everything. And right now, it's a season of war against a GOP establishment.
What has the Hill, what has the GOP rhino establishment done for this president? This is their opportunity to tell the world that they're serious, like the president is, about national security.
He's going to come to the plate. Throw by Gregorius. Not in time. Throw dropped. Astros win 2-1.
They've got Abby's play mix again. Darius Rucker. Who doesn't love Darius Rucker, though?
I think, how's Pete doing with this, though? I mean, we had Rascal Flats last hour. You doing okay, Pete?
This is
back?
remnants of Hootie and the Blowfish, so it's good on me.
All right.
And you know what? We started with some baseball there. That means you know it's fall, it's October, football is starting. There's another reason you might know that it's the fall as well, though. A fall festival, which we have one of our own on the plaza this morning.
We love doing this every fall. As you can see, we've got pumpkins, we've got cider donuts.
We've got kids coming out. We got kids coming. They woke up early.
And the Hellworks family is responsible for this, so a big thank you to them. But it just, as you said, Pete, gets you in the mood for fall. It's starting to feel a little cooler here and around the country.
Are you a pumpkin spice lover?
Oh, yeah.
You get into it
fall
big?
Is my favorite season,
See a little
season
tease
of the year.
for your upcoming interview there. See?
Oh, yeah, with the CEO of Howard Schultz.
Yeah, there you go.
Good tease. That's good TV right there.
He's been here 2 days, and he's already a natural.
He is. I love pumpkins, but there's a reason they only get a little piece of time. They don't taste good.
Yeah, you're not a pumpkin spice latte guy. I know that. No, he's a dark coffee.
Yeah, we're both black coffee. I don't like cream. Black coffee.
I like a lot
brown
of cream.
sugar. There
He's cream with a little touch of coffee.
Now everyone knows our coffee and pumpkin taste.
Well, good morning to all of you.
Good morning
Happy
indeed.
Sunday morning. And another busy one. It was a busy, busy week in Washington with President Trump tackling everything from, as you said, tax reform to health care, talking about that, and the Iran deal. A lot of this came out Friday.
A win with the Supreme Court vacating a lower court decision on the executive order on immigration. So he's really taking a tough stance on this.
It's very true. I have one correction for you, Abby, though. You said busy week in Washington. I would say busy week in the White House, because Washington can't seem to figure anything out.
All right, fair.
But this White House, through executive action, is fulfilling all the campaign promises that this president said he was going to do on the left, in the so-called mainstream media, but amongst the former Obama advisors. There's a lot of angst about this, and they're trying to explain what might be the motivation of this president. Well, here's what David Axelrod had to say about it.
I believe the president thinks that this is chum in the water, fulfilling his campaign promises for his base. I also believe that he is motivated by trying to obliterate the Obama legacy, which is in part also chum in the water for his base. But also there's some other thing at play here that I don't have the qualifications to analyze that clearly motivates him, because every time he talks about anything that President Obama did, he talks about it in these very caustic terms, as if he's jealous or envious of the esteem with which Obama left office.
Funny, I think I was watching an SNL skit, but SNL actually did a skit about this.
They did a skit. They were talking about how the president is changing all the policies in the White House, but going so far as to actually change some of the things that were put in place at the White House as well. Watch this.
It's been a big week, folks. We're getting rid of everything Obama did, healthcare, the Iran deal, and we're ripping out all the vegetables in Michelle Obama's garden and planting McNuggets. McNuggets. Love the McNuggets.
You know, it's funny, but it's...
That is actually pretty funny.
It's not funny, because remember the lunch program in L.A.? Please, let's rip out her agenda when it comes to feeding kids.
No, I'm saying it's funny because it's absolutely true in that, guess what most Americans do? They don't have organic gardens in their backyard. Maybe they do. If they do, great. but most Americans love McNuggets, and if they could plant them, they would. And I would plant them and eat them if they would. We know this president does as well. I mean, he's in touch with the pulse of regular people. It's why something like Merry Christmas, it's why something like Stand for the National Anthem, while the so-called mainstream media doesn't understand it and they get into a frenzy.
Well, they don't get middle America. They're being fed by the wings of the country. You got the left coast, the right coast, or whatever you want to call it, and they think that resonates with Americans. And you go through this country, we all do. People think much differently. They look at their kitchen table issues. What matters to them? Are the kids going to soccer or football or baseball? Can I afford this? My taxes are coming up. Americans are dealing in kitchen table issues. Washington, D.C. and the wings of the country, sorry, they're just not there.
But as you said, David, every new administration that comes in, they try to reverse the policies. That's what you do. President Trump ran on all of these issues. No one should be surprised at what he's doing. If anything, it should be a compliment. Regardless,
promise made, promise kept.
If the Democrats are upset, it means he's actually doing something. He's doing something to make them mad, that he's trying to reverse some of those policies, not because he hates Barack Obama, but because he's passionate about the issues that he campaigned on. He wants to actually execute them.
It's funny, when you get rid of a prior president's policies, it's racist, but when Obama does it to Bush, it's
Which he did, by the way. And he had every right to do that when he came into office.
But what Barack Obama ran on was a fundamental transformation of America. He said, I want this country to be different. I want this country to be different than the 43 previous presidents. I don't believe in it the way they did. So what Donald Trump is doing is saying, no, I'm going to fundamentally restore America to what its original vision is.
Make
that's not
America
racist,
great
that's
again.
not sexist.
Come on, that's a great idea. Who doesn't want it? We're a great country. By the way, Hillary Clinton, in our, I guess if we're going to call it the father country.
Is she still on the book tour?
She's still on the book tour? Is there a book?
Maybe.
Well, you know what happened. But anyway, here's what happened on British television with Hillary Clinton playing the blame game.
This really perfect storm. And so you had the Comey letter, the enormous impact of the Russian theft of emails, the release of them by WikiLeaks.
So you're still blaming others more than yourself?
No. I take ultimate responsibility. I don't blame others, but I think it's important that people understand what happened. So when I decided to run for president some years later, the other side knew that they had to tear me down. And, you know, I made some mistakes they took advantage of, but they also engaged in this really horrible, relentless persecution of me. And they used online media, social media, to carry those messages, and they were aided and abetted by the Russians.
Relentless persecution of me during a campaign, as you said.
Right, it's a political campaign, not persecution. This is the problem. Hillary Clinton is disconnected from the American people, and that's why she lost. She didn't go to the blue states, didn't go to Wisconsin. You know, instead of fighting for votes and going after votes, she went after a message and a narrative, and Americans are sick of that.
That's what Governor Mike Huckabee said. We had him on last hour on the show, and he said if she worked as hard as she has on this book tour and blaming everyone else around her, maybe she might have won the election. Here's what he said.
She says, it's all my responsibility. Well, except for those 32 other reasons that I can give you as to why it wasn't my responsibility. It fits her narrative to blame it on the Russians. And let me quickly add, the same Russians with whom she set the reset, and the same Russians that her boss, President Obama, said he could be more flexible after the election. So if they had such a great relationship with the Russians, how do they blame the Russians for her loss? I get the impression that if she'd worked as hard to win the presidency as she had to explain her loss in the presidency, heck, she might have won.
Boy, that's true. And David, you talked about how out of touch she is. I wonder, you know, she hadn't, in the campaign it was reported she hadn't driven a car for 2 decades.
Right.
You think she's driven a car since the election?
No, well,
I don't know. I mean, has she tried? I feel like
that interviewer on BBC asked her a lot of tough questions, though. I mean, he really was hammering her.
That reporter did his job. I mean, I bet he never gets a second interview.
There were moments where she seemed a bit uncomfortable, where she didn't want to talk about it.
Well, it's because she won't come on Fox News Channel and answer actual questions, but she will go to the fake news media, which will fawn over her and say, Hillary, tell us about the Russians.
Hillary, that's not what this guy did.
Unrelenting. Yeah. This guy actually asked real questions, and she never, during the campaign, she didn't want to be asked real questions either. She avoided the media, she avoided the tough states, the tough topics.
Well, maybe that's what happened, Pete. Maybe that's exactly what happened. When you're not real and you don't address things head on and you're not honest with the American people about things, then it's tough to win elections.
Yeah, you can tell people what to think, but they're going to think what they want when they go into the voting booth.
Yeah. And you can, like, smell authenticity or not. And I feel like they saw in President
Trump. That's what Donald Trump did. He resonated with people. If you're in Romeo, Michigan at an engine plant, you know that at least I can hear this guy, I can see him.
Voters just want people to be real. They want the people they vote for to relate to them. They want to feel like they're friends with them. They want them to be real people. So.
And if you're in Romeo, Michigan at a, what is it? What
engine plant.
Engine
plant. Mustang engine plant.
Email us at friends@foxnews.com and let us know if David Webb spoke properly for you.
Ooh.
I think he probably did, but let us know.
I've been to that plant a couple of times.
Have you?
Yeah.
Man knows what he's
great plant.
All right, well, busy morning. I want to bring you some other headlines we're following, starting with a Fox News alert and wind-fueled flames now stretching up to 100 miles wide, forcing new evacuations in Northern California. And this, as we learn, at least 40 people have now died there. That number expected to climb as hundreds of people still remain missing. The cause of the fires, which broke out last Sunday, still being investigated as officials look into whether downed power lines may have played a role. We'll keep an eye on that one. And the Motion Picture Academy kicking out Harvey Weinstein amid sexual harassment accusations. The world's top movie organization making the decision to expel the disgraced Hollywood producer in an emergency session yesterday. The Academy releasing a statement saying this in part: the era of willful ignorance and shameful complicity in sexually predatory behavior and workplace harassment in our industry is over. And Vice President Pence and former VP Joe Biden hitting the campaign trail in Virginia's governor's race. In the Virginia governor's race, everyone's watching this one closely. Pence rallying for Republican Ed Gillespie in front of coal country voters in Abington.
Ed Gillespie is pro-jobs. He's pro-growth. He's pro-American energy. He's pro-life. He's pro-Second Amendment. Folks, you name it, Ed Gillespie's on the right side of every issue.
This race is getting hot. Biden swinging by an event in Reston, throwing his weight behind Democrat Ralph Northam. And it's some sports now. The MLB playoffs heating up. The Houston Astros and the New York Yankees taking a 1-1 tie to the bottom of the ninth. That is when a miscue by Yankees catcher Gary Sanchez allows a run to score all the way from first base. Astros win 2-1 to take the 2-0 series
That short
lead.
hop is tough to get, you know?
Okay. Now to L.A., where the Dodgers take on the Chicago Cubs. The home team proving to be just too much for the defending champs.
Put the Dodgers on the board for the first time. Deep to left field. Schwarber can't find it, and he's at the wall. It's gone.
Dodgers get to win 5-2 and lead the series now 1-0. Some good games.
I'm just jealous of everyone that has a team. The Major League Baseball playoffs are the best.
Did you hear the crack of that bat? That's baseball. That's what I love. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, set to meet with President Trump tomorrow. But there's a new movement to out the Senate leader, and it's being led by conservatives. One of those conservatives joins us next.
And this restaurant is forced to shut down just because the owners supported America and the president. You're going to have to hear this one.
Yeah, that one gets me baffled. Former White House Chief of Staff, strategist Steve Bannon. Former White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon declaring war on the GOP establishment.
It's a season of war against a GOP establishment. We need to move with urgency. The President of the United States deserves respect and deserves their support. And you can come to a microphone, and you can say, I am not going to vote for Mitch McConnell for Majority Leader.
Strong words, and President Trump is set to meet with McConnell this week to discuss a path forward. But some conservative groups want the leader out over his inability to pass the president's agenda. Here to explain is CEO of Tea Party Patriots, Jenny Beth Martin. Jenny, give voice to this feeling that says the majority leader has got to go.
Well, we sit here looking at what has not happened in the United States Senate. We see that Obamacare has not been repealed, that we do have a new Supreme Court justice. We appreciate that we have Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, but we've only had 6 other judges not named Gorsuch named to the Supreme Court. Congress still has an illegal exemption from Obamacare. There's no attempt to balance the budget at all, and the list goes on and on. The Senate and the Republicans in the Senate made promises, and they're breaking their promises. They're not keeping them.
You know, Jenny Beth, and by the way, Steve Bannon, they're channeling what I call his inner Breitbart, because if you look at those films, he looks exactly like him. Andrew railed against the establishment. He wanted to take down the institutional left. Now, are you saying there's an institutional right? But how do we do it? How do you take Mitch McConnell out as Senate Majority Leader? What's the opposition?
Well, we will continue to work right now in the very short-term future to pass tax reform. We have to do that so that we can help President Trump on that. And then next year, as we look at candidates who are going to run for the United States Senate, ask them whether they're going to vote for Mitch McConnell as leader or not. Ask them if they're willing to make it easier to bring bills onto the floor so that we can at least debate them and see where senators stand on them instead of using the filibuster as an excuse to do nothing at all right now. There would be two steps in the right direction. The other thing that Tea Party Patriot Citizens Fund will be focused on is whether the candidate will get rid of the illegal congressional exemption from Obamacare.
All right, so real quick, Jenny Beth. Steve said go after the money. They're cutting off the money. Is that viable as a strategy?
Yeah. It is viable. And the other thing, so you can go after the money, don't donate to candidates who aren't keeping promises. Look for candidates who have conviction and courage and who are conservative. You know, back in 2010 and 12 and even 2014, as candidates were running for office, they weren't quite sure. We didn't fully understand the full depth of the establishment and how much they just cleave to power. We get that now. So as we're looking at our candidates next year, we need to make sure they're candidates who have the courage to stand up to the power in Washington.
Well, definitely a more mature movement at this point. Jenny Beth Martin, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jenny Beth.
Appreciate it.
Coming up, Al Sharpton, can you believe it? He's back in the news comparing NFL owners to slave owners.
Jerry Jones' decision in many ways smacks of a plantation mentality.